Thank you so much for coming on the show, Gam. It's great to see you again. And this is, of course, how we meet each other nowadays through Zoom. Why
No.
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Okay. Well, I have been in the tech role for, gosh, too many years to mention. But I, began as a programmer. I then ended up in business process engineering, like an old term. And then I wound up in as a product manager
Do people
for,
still do that? Does people still do business process engineering? Or is that
I did.
just,
No, I did it last year.
oh, you
I
do? People still do it?
tried. Yeah.
It's called something else though now, isn't it? Workflow management or something like that? Isn't there like
I
a
think
different
it's
term?
morphed into something that they call process mining. Um,
Process. Okay, process mind. Okay, gotcha.
yeah, it was in the days, I guess, before we even had whiteboards. We had, what is it,
Chalkboards.
overhead projectors. Well, we had overhead projectors and acetate sheets that we used to draw stuff on. And I remember drawing process models for people. And then, it moved on to different tools that like Irwin. If you remember Irwin, that's still around. And there's some
I don't remember
software.
Irwin, but I do remember overhead projectors because I saw one the other day sitting on the street corner with a free sign on it. And I'm like, who's going to take that?
I would to go into the garage of memorabilia.
Wouldn't it be great to actually walk into it? Like if you were a professor, you walk into a class and bring an overhead projector with acetates and stuff like that. The kids would be like, what the hell is he doing?
I think that would actually be fantastic. That's like going to an interview in Silicon Valley wearing a suit and tie because people go, "What's going on?" And you kind of disarm them with
Yeah,
that.
throw them off.
So you walk into a meeting with a full scale overhead projector and a file of
Yeah,
slides,
yeah,
and you get
exactly.
them to drop the slides so they all scatter and get mixed up, and then you'll kind of bring them on and you'll talk about things at random, out of sequence.
That's right. That's right. And they're so impressed by your ability to like wow them, then you're hired immediately.
I
I don't
think
think
we
that'll
rely
never
too
happen.
much. We rely way too much on the PowerPoint these days.
We do.
Fancy builds. I think you can get by with so much less of that if you think about how you're going to deliver your message. So
Exactly
yeah.
right. Exactly right. So keep
So
going.
anyway, oh
Business
yeah,
process
so
engineering, which is now something else, but
process engineering, and then I kind of wound my way back into software. This time as a product manager for BI and analytics vendor, and so
mhm,
I've been moseying around product management for quite a while. And then I ran a data strategy team for an insurance company in the UK, trying to commercialize their data.
mhm,
Not monetize, but I say commercialize because it's how to drive value out of data, particularly exhaust data.
mhm.
Did that for a while, then joined a text analytics startup where I had a team of data scientists. Um, and then finally, me for my first retail days.
Mhm.
We started off the company um, trying to make sense of unstructured data to add almost near real time making sense of unstructured data.
Was there a
Um,
particular reason why you decided to focus on retail? Because they do need the help.
well, because semantic search, um, is so needed. I think,
Mm,
we've been educated badly by search engines to use, keywords, but we don't have the finesse of what we really want.
right.
And I think if content was to be more findable, then I think we stand a better chance of honing in on what we want. And that's to begin with, that's retail.
Mhm,
Um, but where I see it going is with things like personal data stores.
mhm.
So if if there's a store of data about you in a store and a store of data about me in a store, and if if we are to maintain some degree of privacy in our lives, and privacy is a strange concept in the first place, but if our personal data is not going to be used and we gain no value from it, like it's traded multiple times, um, then we're going to need to lock our data down in a personal data store of some sort. So
Mhm.
Tim Berners-Lee and Inrupt is sort of leading the way with these personal data stores. Now, if you keep your data store on Inrupt, and I keep my data store on another one of these providers, let's talk about perhaps, Privacy Cloud or Citizen Me or Tribal Data, each one of
I've
those.
never heard of any of these, but I'd love to hear more because I went
Yeah,
into so around 2009, I did some work with the World Economic Forum. We were talking about personal data stores because it was right after the big Facebook data breach. And we thought,
yeah.
oh, there was going to be a huge demand for privacy and a huge demand for personal data stores. And then it just disappeared because people were like, okay, that's not important anymore. And then it became nothing. It just went from 100 to zero, just like that. And people didn't care about storing their personal data on the cloud. They were okay with it. So, I mean, how do we get people back into this? I mean, are things like ramping up again on this front, or are we
They
still?
are. Um,
Mhm.
they are, but I don't think, having kind of gone down that route myself, trying to work out what somebody might want in technology, what I quickly realized is that people are apathetic. You've had my friend John on this show,
Mhm.
talking about, why we should be paying for things rather than exchanging our data for free stuff online. So, but the thing is, um, there is so much convenience to be had from giving
Mhm.
our data away. I mean, the cookie was a wonderful, wonderful thing because it
Absolutely.
collected things about me with passively, and it was great. And I get huge value from the cookie. Imagine if Google couldn't tune its search results to me,
Mhm.
it would be horrible. It couldn't make sense of the web.
Or it would be great because you
It would be
actually get
great.
to see things that are not perfectly devised specifically for you. It might improve discovery, right?
May do.
Hmm.
But I think there's huge convenience to be had, and people, um, they, as much as people say when they're surveyed, yes, I care about my personal data. Yes, I don't trust it. Of course they do. And then, I'm on TikTok, on the TikTok app,
Which is
on the
harvesting
phone,
all of your data.
harvesting everything, and it's so what they say and what they do is very different. So
Hmm.
I think what needs to happen is the value equation has to change. The individual has to see so much value from privately held data about them rather than personal data. And there are still quite a lot of attempts to pay you for your data. Um, and I keep saying that it's not worth anything as a
Hmm.
granule. It's worth
Hmm.
something in aggregate. It's worth huge amounts in aggregate, but my data is worth nothing. So I think it's Gerald Lanier is busy trying to help us monetize our data. I think he's on to I don't think he's on to anything here, but I
Well,
think
didn't we looked at that sometime a number of years ago? I think you pointed out there was a service that was helped you validate your value your data. And I went in there and it said my data was worth like 3 cents or 4 cents or 14 cents or something like that. So such a tiny, pitiful little
yeah,
amount
it's
that
not
it
worth
wasn't
it.
worth monetizing.
No, but if the data that you keep can be used to give you additional convenience, that'd be phenomenal.
Hmm.
So if all of my data is hubbed somewhere and I can give permissions for people to use it, then the next time I go to search something, I mean, travel is the one that I think needs solving.
Oh, tell me
I think
about
we
it.
all have our travel habits and peculiarities and preferences. If the next time I go onto a site, it actually knows me from all the things I've done before and credits me with some stuff, just makes my travel search much easier. I mean, I think when we got rid of travel agents and we got rid of any sort of agent that had an opportunity to know me personally, then we lost a lot. And what we've
Absolutely.
got is we've got a poor simulation of that with personalization. I mean, it doesn't quite work as well as it did. I mean, I always think of I think it's Ike in Little House of the Prairie.
Hmm.
When they walked into the store, they knew what she wanted. And Mrs. Wilder would get a basket of stuff and she might even get it delivered home. We didn't need Amazon Instacart for that. They
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah.
And so how yet that data was the data was private and it was retained by your confidant.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we've got to get back to that at scale, I think, if we find some value. Now, going back to my journey into why we were trying to make sense of unstructured data is because if your data is on one data store and my data is on another data store, we have very different profiles.
Hmm.
Perhaps our jobs are parallel, but our geographical location is very different. So all the stores we visit are different. The types of things we do are different. So what you're going to end up with is, if you add my data and your data and everybody else's data, you're going to end up with a very, very sparse database. It's not structured for heavy analysis.
Hmm.
What we've got to do is we've got to draw all of that data together for populations and make it easily queryable. So we've got to add some structure onto unstructured data to make it usable to machines. There's a company called ICVAR that I suggest you invite John Horden at some point. But they've got a very large engine that I think it takes data and maps out 300 dimensions, and then it builds this
Only
300,
300 dimensions?
just 300.
That
Yeah,
seems that seems low.
well, at first retail, we were trying to build an n-dimensional
Oh,
model that would continually add dimensions every time there was a new, I guess, attribute. It would just add another dimension.
that sounds like it
To
would get unwieldy very fast.
Well, the idea was we distribute it over machines, then keep clustering the data into similar blobs of data. And apparently, the technology that we were emulating was what is it? It was some molecular dynamics models used
Oh,
by tech, because
nice.
it's all about stabilizing. And apparently, when an electron bumps out of a level, it needs to get back to stability. And so we're using those algorithms. Anyway, it was an adventure in my life that got me here. But then
That's actually fascinating, because does that tell me that all the world is information, and underneath it all there's connection, there's a grand unified theory of everything that we can actually get to at some point? Because if those things are similar.
I think so. I mean, we didn't invent data.
Hmm.
Nature did. I love this kind of idea of not the idea, well, DNA is just a very concentrated store of data. It's very
Yep.
clever. But the cleverest thing about DNA is that as it propagates, um, it discards the stuff that's not useful anymore.
Mm.
And so it doesn't have this too much data problem. It has just enough data to keep surviving. And it's not this not this growth mentality where I have to keep adding to the store and trying to click. It's far smarter than we are. So I think underneath all of this, nature is managing a unified theory for us.
Wow. Maybe we should emulate DNA. It
We
sounds like it's
should emulate DNA. We should
we don't. We do the
bio,
opposite.
well, yes. And biomimicry is taking off again, isn't it? If you've seen, there's lots of systems that are employing biomimicry. I know that there is the ant search algorithms, that's just one, but there is my friend did his PhD in autonomous vehicle movements. So
Hmm.
you could get autonomous vehicles to move at speed on a freeway without bumping into each other if you follow bird flocking, how
Mm.
birds flock, or fish shoal. And so those are actually interesting techniques. I think there was a paper recently that talked about how social media users also shoal
Mm.
like fish because they're
Interesting.
independent, and yet all of a sudden everybody moves in one direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we should be looking to nature. We've got a lot to learn. We think that what we need to learn first is that we don't know it all.
What is it? Isn't that Socrates who said, "What the only thing I know is that I know nothing"?
I
I
know
think
you
somebody said.
Greeks, you know an awful lot.
So keep going.
And then more recently, we started taking on data strategy projects.
Hmm.
Probably because we more or less knew what we were doing, and so we were starting to go into organizations to help them understand what data asset they were sitting on. And I think that this whole idea of data as a corporate asset, um, cash is an obvious asset, and you manage it very carefully, and you have a treasury. But data is often, I guess, subservient to the processes and the systems.
Hmm.
I don't think about data on its own. However, that's changing. There are chief data officers, and they're their brief a lot of the time is to provide governance and provide infrastructure. Where they're just getting to is trying to understand the opportunities afforded by data, because so we've been helping organizations see their data in a different light, to try and understand the opportunities that come from pure data alone, and find out, well, look, here's a whole new business that comes from data, or
Yeah.
here's a new set of systems that come from data first, really.
Are they, where do you think most companies are? Do you think they're still in the we're not sure what to collect space, or they're in the we collect everything, we don't know what to do with it space?
I think they're in the I need another dashboard space. There's a lot of companies are still, I think the majority of companies are still, discovering dashboards and reporting.
Hmm.
The BI industry is growing still.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, companies like Tableau are still growing and being really successful in just providing basic insights to people. Now, that said, there is, the leading edge that is actually investing in data science and
Hmm.
understanding that things are algorithmic, and you can use machine learning to reduce costs or to do things faster than could be done by humans.
Hmm.
So I think that's happening. I think we're tripping over ourselves a little bit because we tend to forget the ethics, and we make some poor
Ethics,
decisions.
schmethics. We need to know if it can be
That's
done,
right.
right?
Yes. So we're trying to, yeah, well, let's just put it out there and see what happens. And then all of a sudden it hurts somebody, and then we have a problem.
Well, then you backtrack, right? I mean, isn't
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
that how human beings innovate? They go too far, and then they go, oh crap, we went too far. Let's step back a little bit.
yeah. And it, because of AI being so fast, learning so fast, that what is it? Microsoft Tay lasted 2 days. And yeah, and they
I
backtracked, and
told
it's
you I have a theory about that. I'll send you I have a series of videos on why I think that's the case. I think I might have talked to you about that before, because we're all trying to gain attention online. So we're
yeah.
never ourselves. We're an outraged mob of ourselves, and that's what Tay was eating on, was munching on, is all these outrage that people throw out to grab attention, right? If people were actually their real selves, then Tay might have been all right. Who knows?
If Tay was just to eavesdrop in cafe conversations,
Yeah, exactly.
it
Where
might
people
have
are
done better.
speaking directly to each other instead of through some kind of interface.
Well, I guess, Tay was open to be gamed, so
As so
anything
we
that
all
can
that's what human
be.
beings do. We mess with things, right? When you put something
Yeah,
out there, we mess with it. Like you want something
yeah,
messed with, you put it out there.
yeah, exactly. So, we've been helping organizations do that. And I think the thing that we found the most was um organizations, the data has largely been the preserve of the CIO
Hmm.
and technical departments, and perhaps, the head of analytics and data science, and they've been really data literate, and they know what can be done. But the majority of the organization is still in the dark. They do what they're told. They take the reports. Sometimes they want a different report, and it takes them a year to get what they actually want. So they make decisions, and so the organization is not very data agile.
Mm.
And the majority of the employees, or co-workers in the organization, are not, that they lack data literacy, and so on the whole, the organization lacks the imagination. Um, Back in 2014 or 15, we were working with a taxi company in New York. They operated 200 yellow cabs. At the time, the medallion value was about a million and a bit. So it
Wow.
was a $200 million company. And they had, I think it was about a year after, I don't remember the year, but it was about a year after Uber had entered their market. And the license with the medallion was now worth 700,000,
Whoa.
less than half the value of the company. And they called us in because they said, well, what can we do? How can we rebuild this? And we helped them a bit, but I think it was too little too late. And my kind of my teaching out of this is, you need to imagine the data that you don't necessarily have.
Hmm.
Um, taxi, I always say, look at the data you have and that you know about. Look at the data that you have and you don't know about. Look at the data that you don't have and you know about. And then this is the most interesting. Look at the data that you don't have and you didn't think you had, didn't think you knew about even.
I'm
And
imagining a chart with 4 quadrants.
it's exactly that. Yeah. So top right, data we have, data we know about. That's in your data warehouse because you use that every day. Um, Data that you don't have that you do know about. Well, what are your competitors selling? You
Hmm.
you know about it, but you don't have it. Or this exhaust data is what data is being generated in your systems that you don't even tap. And then so event logs. I'll talk about event logs a bit later, but all your systems spit out this history and it can be used very, very profitably. But then there's this data we don't have and we don't know about, so we've got, you've got a bunch of taxi companies around the world and they're busy with drivers and cars and they're measuring mileage and stuff. But they don't realize that, Uber's looking at the data from the driver's phone and the data from the passenger's phone and saying, well, are they near each other? And that's GPS data. And I guess that is just, it's data exhaust. But all of a sudden, Uber picked it up, joined it up, and all of a
Yep.
sudden, a taxi can find a passenger can find a taxi. And it changed the whole landscape of the ride industry, around the world.
Yep.
So this is where the big idea is. This is where the game changer for the company or game changer for the industry is in that. And so, we're trying to help organizations really understand those 4 quadrants. Um, so we've been doing that for a while. And I realized that I didn't have to be in the Bay Area to do that anymore. So we now live in Spain.
We have
So
so the question is that bottom corner where it's data that you don't know about. How
mhm.
do you determine that? How do you find the data that you don't know about if you don't know about it? I mean, how do you find out about it?
That's a little bit more random because I think there's some structured ways of going about this, but then I
Or should
think
you just forget about that data until you handle the other three that you know about?
well, handle the other three. I mean, I think most
Yeah.
organizations, as I said, they're trying to get they understand reporting and they know how to do that. I think it's look at data that 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 the interesting one is, is there any data that you already have that you didn't know you have? So
Mm.
inventory that, look at all the data that's being created and just try and understand that and see, well, is there anybody else in my organization or in my customers or in my suppliers that might find that data useful?
Mm.
Or there's somebody else. So this is where this whole idea of data products was born. Um, if you are so I was working for an insurance company in the UK. We were putting telematics boxes into cars. So every second, every car would send back a GPS location and a bearing in which
Hmm.
direction it's heading in. So if you add all those up, you get the journey of the car.
That's super useful.
Yeah. So, obviously we were working for an insurance company, so we could do pay by the mile insurance. Great. But if you take all the cars that are traveling along a road at a particular time of day, you can see the traffic flow.
Hmm.
And if you take that over a long period, you get urban traffic flows. And instead of having a guy at the end of the road counting cars, you've got an automatic car counter. You've got a sample of cars that are going through. So you decide to put some roadwork, some construction work on the road. We can predict what that delay is going to look like. So, you know, is there data around that could be useful to anybody else? What data, if I'm a retailer, what data can I share with my customers? Well, people who liked this also bought that.
Yep.
So
Super useful, I think.
useful. Amazon's the third biggest advertiser online.
Hmm. People
So,
forget people forget about Amazon ads for some reason. I don't know why.
well, because they beautifully concealed it inside the store.
Yep.
So of course, Amazon's a data machine. And I think my friend Andreas, whom I mention in a bit, but he was the chief scientist at Amazon,
Wow.
and he Jeff Bezos brought him in to teach the organization the scientific method and how to use data.
Really, we have functioning adults that do not know the scientific method.
Oh
They
yeah.
exist. Wow. My estimation of the overall human race just dropped.
Yeah. And so, as a result, Amazon just is one gigantic bundle of experiments, and we're all being experimented on all the time.
Exactly.
Uh,
My Alexa is listening in on me right now as we speak.
yeah. And writing this book has kind of got me, or publishing the book really. I think it was partly the conversations with you regarding book publishing, but publishing the book has changed my view of even digital transformation, just the
Hmm.
publishing. The fact that Amazon has upended the entire publishing industry in one
Oh,
go.
absolutely. Absolutely.
In
No question.
Kindle and then Kindle Direct Publishing, it's democratized publishing. It's taken the kind of cobwebs out of the publishing industry, which was, I guess, quirky and nepotistic at
Hmm.
best.
Hmm.
Now anybody can publish and anybody is. And there's this whole ecosystem in Fiverr of all of the people who will serve you to help you publish the book. And you can get a book published for very little money indeed. You're not going to sell that many if you don't push it. But that's but the thing
But
is,
isn't that's basically how publishing worked in the past too? It was just
yeah,
just as selective. But now it's democratized. It's kind of like the exact same thing that happened with podcasting and with YouTube videos. With it's
right.
just democratizing all these things. It's pushing it back down to the individual creator to be able to do something about it. And the thing is, you still need a lot of work to create a
But what
successful
Amazon's
content
done
object.
is out of nothing, it has entered this industry and changed it.
Yeah,
Now,
it's been
same book.
transformed utterly, utterly transformed.
So, my I guess provocation to anybody that think about a digital transformation. Well, the thing about Amazon is it had no baggage in the industry. It had
Hmm.
nothing,
Hmm.
just started from scratch. So if you're in an industry, doesn't matter what it is, think about, okay, let's play it, let's do a 2-day exercise and pretend we're Amazon. Here's the infrastructure that we have, here's the market, this is what we're good at. We don't know anything about the rubber tire industry.
Hmm.
But if Amazon decides to get into it, they'll work it out.
Oh,
What would
absolutely.
Amazon do if they came into tires? Well, they probably, there's a long chain between moving rubber from I don't know, Malaysia to where the cars are.
Hmm.
There might be a better way to do that, and Amazon will find it because they'll figure it out. Um, but going back to the scientific method is, if somebody started to sell tires on Amazon successfully, Amazon would wake up and go, "Oh, hang on a sec, this is what I need to get into this market. How am I going to do it?" And if they decide it's worthwhile, they'll do it and come and change the industry. So this transformation, Amazon being such a digital model, with very little kind of physical infrastructure and baggage in any particular industry, is a really good way to think about how a transformation can be done.
Hmm. But could you say that? I mean, didn't you read that article the other day that said that Alexa is losing 10 billion a year or something like that? The Echo is losing 10 billion a year. Is it because we're talking about a hardware product? Is that why you think they're losing the money? It's like they need to focus. I mean, AWS has been a huge moneymaker for them, in addition to the retailing and all that stuff. But is it because it's a hardware product? Is that why they're losing the money?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's definitely part of, hang on, I think it depends on how you measure it.
Mm.
Alexa might be losing money on its own, but is it contributing?
Well, that's what I was thinking too. I'm thinking you can have these headlines that blast, "Oh, Alexa's losing Amazon $10 billion
Yeah.
directly." However, can you imagine the value of the data that it's collecting right now as it's listening to all of us? I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be immeasurable.
Yeah. I mean, you do your podcasts every day in the house and you've got headphones on, so it's not hearing me. Otherwise, Alexa will think that your house is just a hotel. But
Exactly.
yeah, the data that's coming back off Alexa, the data that will come back off the Roomba, when it starts to map the inside of your house, that there is tremendous value to that data, even though the data product, I talk about this thing called data alchemy. It's
Hmm.
how you create a free service, you put it out there, and it becomes really popular. And then what you do is you harvest the data off it, make money on the data, and then increase I guess, the cycle time of your data collection until you've got a very geared model now. So you're increasing the cycle time, you're producing more and more data, and you're monetizing it somewhere else.
Hmm.
The classic one is, I'm going to go and build an index for all the websites in the world. Great. And then I'm going to, every time someone searched, I'm going to record the search term. I'm going to record what they clicked on. So every individual, I know who you are and I know what you want. So I know what you want next. By the way, I'm going to serve ads to you as well that reflect what you want.
Yeah.
And
The
then,
AdWords
and
model,
yeah, so that's
invented
ad.
by Overture, which
That's
Yahoo
right.
bought.
Exactly.
People forget that. It's something
Oh,
that was
no,
the
I
dumbest
remember.
deal of the century when so Yahoo bought Overture and Overture owned the rights to AdWords, and then Google just started doing AdWords, and Yahoo sued them, and I think they paid him like a one time amount. And I'm thinking, you idiots, you could have survived your entire lives by having some kind of residual profits from AdWords because it's the most profitable machine on the internet. But sorry,
So that's
rant over.
but no, it's a good rant because the alchemy model it goes to show the people that built the free search, because they had the data, they were more powerful than people that had the business.
Exactly.
So data wins,
Hmm.
and
Well,
data
data
wins.
always wins, doesn't it? Data always wins when you have
Yeah,
enough.
yes. Unfortunately, people don't realize how close to data most people are. Your
Mm,
average person. I the story I tell is, we drive our kids to school every day,
hmm.
um, and we go a certain route. We don't try a different route every day, and we don't leave at a different time every day. We figured it out because what we're doing is we know which routes get blocked when. We know what the time we need to leave. We know what time we're going to arrive. We can get ourselves to school on time to pick our kids up at the door. It's like great, but it just shows we're natural analysts.
Hmm.
Do this all the time, and everybody does it. I was talking to a lady the other day. She must have been 75. She was retired, and historically she'd run a tea shop
Hmm.
uh, in Devon in England, and she served cream teas. And she's a friend of my parents, and my parents had told her that I'd written a book, and she was like, "Well, what's your book about?" And I said, "Well, it's about data for people who don't really understand or want to know about data." And said, "Oh, yeah, I don't know anything about data." Um, and I said, "Of course you do. Um, when you ran your tea shop, um, did you know how much to order?" She said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "Well, you could predict next week's sales and make sure you ordered just enough so you wouldn't have to throw food, but then you'd order enough, so you'd order plenty so you wouldn't run short. You knew. How did you know?" I said, "Well, I used to know what we sold and I know what we ordered, and I know this supplier takes a long time and this one's expensive, but they deliver on time every time." And so I said, "This is all data."
Hmm.
You're naturally doing it. And so we're all analysts. I mean, I think that's what it takes to be human.
Hmm.
We analyze things and we learn from our experiences and we correct them. And so we're the original machine learning, I guess you could say. So we understand all of that. And I think and so what we were trying to do when we wrote the book is to um, make data interesting. It's like bring it
Mm.
home with very simple stories.
Yeah,
Um,
because if you think about it, it is kind of boring when you think about it. I mean,
Really boring.
it's incredibly boring. At least, I mean, from my perspective, I'm not a data scientist. I'm sure data scientists find data fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But I just think that like you said, I mean, especially in the exhaust piece, it's like this is just stuff that comes out of it, right? I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like exhaust doesn't even seem valuable at all, right? That's why they even call it exhaust. It's like,
Yeah.
the after leavings of of the engine. So, but you're saying that there is value in the exhaust.
There's huge amounts of value in the exhaust. So let's go back to the event logs.
Hmm.
Most systems um, create a log file of everything that happens. Let's just say we're a cafeteria and we're selling coffee. You just pulled the coffee back up.
You are
and
you're
and
making me hungry and thirsty. First you talk about cream teas, now you're talking about coffee.
we we'll do another food podcast later.
Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
so let's just say, we're a company operating restaurants, cafes, and um, there's a famous one that comes out of Seattle. I can't remember its name. Saved my life. But
I've heard of them. They have a few stores.
yeah, handful, yeah. They're
Mm.
in Madrid too. I have no idea why, because the coffee here is really, really good. Um, but they don't sell coffee, do they?
Well, they're actually
Sell
in
space.
Milan as well, believe it or not. But
Yeah,
go
but I
on.
think they sell space.
Hmm.
It's a physical space. They
The
rent you space.
third place, right? The third
Yeah,
place.
they rent you space. And so we anyway, so they're generating data. What was I talking about? Exhaust data.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just like you brought your cup of coffee up. I had to work out what I had to stall for time.
So this tiny little chain um,
Yeah.
creates exhaust data. How do they what kind of exhaust data? Just
Well, I let's just think, the dwell time. Where how long do people last? One of the things is and now I'm gonna make stuff up, okay, because I don't know if this works or not. But
all right.
if they have a soundtrack playing in the cafe, okay, and they sell the CDs of the soundtrack, it's like how many people buy the CDs?
Hmm.
That does that tell them what music to play or not? Can they correlate what CDs get bought with the coffee sales of that day? Because now we can see, well, are the people that come in that spend money here, what music do they like? So we can thereby improve the environment as well. Actually, there's an actual story that's better than this. It's um, when car companies like Ford release a car, and they have to, when they make to order, but also they make a load
Hmm.
not to order that just sit on the dealers lots.
Yeah, because they
And
figure this is like a standard configuration that people
yeah,
will purchase.
but how do they know what color to paint them? Like there's a range of colors. Which color do they paint them? What they
Gray is
do?
in style.
Well, yeah, no. What they do is when you go onto the website and you can create a car and you choose the color,
Hmm.
they use that color picker. They use the data from the color picker, which is exhaust data, and they, build a graph of which colors are the most popular where, and they make the cars to that specification. They
Oh
they,
man,
they
then
design a color
people are
range to
very
that.
bland. Then why are people so bland? Almost every other car I see is gray or white or black. It's got no color.
The gray, white, black, red, blue, and then there's the odd green one and the odd yellow one and the odd orange one
Uh,
and the
uh,
odd brown one,
Around here, raw. It's odd red, odd blue. It's like they're always
or even blue
white.
ones. Wow.
But then I figured out that apparently they charge more for the other colors, and that's one of the reasons why. See, so they actually subvert the exhaust data because if every color was
Yeah,
the same price, then you could get a more
that's
indicative
right.
of what people want. But
Yeah.
if some colors are more expensive than others, that for example, the red I got in my Mazda is $500 more. It's like, wait a minute, who's going to pay the $500 more unless they really love the color?
So all of that data is completely useful. So this is how you go about kind of hunting down the exhaust data and trying to figure out how to monetize it.
Hmm.
Where were we?
So you wrote the book for everybody else, for the people who are not in data. Is that right?
Yeah,
So that
very
they're
definitely.
just
Yeah.
it's more
So
is it like a primer? So it's like would I if I knew nothing about it, would I be able to open it up and read it and go, oh yeah, I understand this now? Or is it more? Do you have to be a bit more advanced than that?
no, it's super easy. We tell
Hmm.
stories. And I think part of it is that as humans, the way we transmitted information to each other before we could write was in the form of stories. So
Hmm.
stories are the things that resonate. And when Bernardo and I teach at the business school, we find the things where there's a story or an anecdote attached, the things that tend to stick. So, I mean, also it makes teaching very easy because I'm just telling different stories that I have. It's a little bit like, and now I understand how stand-up works, stand-up comedians, because they've got this repertoire of stories they tell. It's not like they've memorized jokes.
Yeah.
They've just got stories they tell. And so what we're doing is we're telling stories. And so this is just a collection of the stories that we tell or exercise that we use in workshops and things like that. And so these come out of conversations with people that we've had, and I think people naturally resonate. They want to read them because they're interested, and they're not. And there's a lesson about data at the end of it. If they so wish, they can apply it, but
Hmm.
if not, it just lodges in their memory. And so I often find that I'm trying to work on something. It's like, oh yeah, have you thought about it this way? Because if you think about it this way, then there's something. So even I use the lessons from the book. So it's a good sign. But yeah, it's targeted at. If I said, going back to the concentration of data literacy is really in your technology departments and your data science departments, and everybody else is a little bit left in the dark as to what's going on.
Hmm.
Um, things, but when you're trying to change an organization and improve things, data is such a fundamental part. And so, to try and get people to focus on data quality is really hard because data quality is, I guess as it's twice as boring as data.
Isn't that the most important thing, though? I mean, if your data is crap, then you're
Yeah,
not going to get
absolutely.
anything out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so your data's bad, and so what we want them to do. So if you're trying to make some change or improve an organization, um, people have to be much more aware of data because then they will understand what you're trying to do and be supportive or be able to make it go faster or actually be critical of it.
Hmm.
And not critical because people don't like change, but really critical because this what you're doing is wrong. And if they understand that, the organization will become a lot more powerful, a lot more agile. And so we designed it for everybody not in IT. And so our hope is that people who are in technology or data centric roles would read it and go, oh, hang on a sec, I need to give this to so and so because they're critical to my next project,
And of course, order 12,000 copies for their organization.
at least. But I think we've written it for organizations that have 12 people as well as 1,200 and as well as 12,000. So yes.
I love it. Okay, well, it's time to think like a futurist. It's the year 2032. So 10 years from now, where will we be when it comes to data? Do you think we'll have a better understanding? You think it'll actually be utilized more like better, or are we going down a path of too much data, not enough understanding?
I think it'll be it'll be like electricity.
Hmm.
When I reach for the light switch, I don't think about the electrical current or where it's produced or what's happening. It's just there and the light comes on. So, the light switch is such a good application um, because I want light, I hit the switch. And so we're going to be worrying about decisions. And there's going to be a lot of infrastructure managing the data for us. There's going to be a lot more infrastructure that is automatically pre-processing and doing all the things that we do because we're just playing with it at the moment. We're not using it at scale, at speed. Now the data will be fed into a decision engine and it will make the decisions. Where does that data come from? You know, this business about combining files and pulling data from different sources, we're not going to think about that. When I write a new system, this is the big prediction. When I write a new system, I'm going to be much more aware of the data that it's creating and the data it's not creating. I'm going to add semantic value to it. I'm going to give it metadata so that data can be read, Data can be found by machines, combined with other data to add more value, and then read by machines to make decisions. Then the cycle time just speeds up. So I think data will be like electricity in 2030. I
And do
hope
you
so
think
anyway.
so? Are you saying that I'll be able to? So you're saying that data will be sort of integrated, the collection of data and the valuing of data will be integrated into everything from day one. And what will we be using to analyze? How can we get these? See, I think there's a disconnect because if you think about Tableau, like you were saying earlier, it just shows certain views on the data. Human beings are creating these queries in the background to create these dashboards. Is any of this stuff going to be automated at that point so that it'll be a lot
Yeah,
easier for us to work with the data?
yeah, the dashboards. I mean, we won't be we won't the machines will recommend us things rather than show us something and we have to make the analysis, because what a machine can do is it can say, oh look, your whatever is trending down at the moment. Did you know that everybody else's isn't? You're doing something wrong. What are you doing wrong? Oh look, this process is creating a bottleneck and an anomaly. So what we've got to do is you've got to take this step out of the process and it will reconfigure the process for you. I don't think we're far off from that. So, companies that are investing heavily in data science today, these are going to be this type of company, will be the next generation of those companies will be will have much more dynamic business processes that are acting on their own. It's there is a cause for concern because the machines might serve whatever corporate objectives they have and ignore society and individuals.
Which
The
is, of course,
machines,
what they've done all this time.
yeah, machines will double down on whatever they're told to double down on
Hmm.
without thinking about the ethics of what they're doing. And then so it is vitally important that now we build systems that are able to they're able to check themselves, and we need to build those checks and balances in. Otherwise, we as humans, individuals or society are going to suffer from the machines. And I don't think the machines are going to take over anytime soon. But we need to, make sure that they're serving the right masters and mistresses.
But if we have companies like Amazon spearheading this, we're never going to get that. I mean, who's going to put the ethics into the machine? No one.
But interestingly, in if you look at who's putting ethics in, so Russia, just in terms of facial recognition, um, Russia is a free for all.
Hmm.
UK, the Metropolitan Police use it without much concern to the ethics.
Hmm.
China has an ethics council. Um, the
But
China's China. But in the
not
US,
much more to say than that, right?
yeah, in the US, the ethics is actually it's companies self-policing. So if you look at big organizations like Amazon, IBM, and Microsoft, they're the ones that are leading with this.
Hmm.
And then after that, I guess you've got the European Union, and the European Union is very heavy on the facial recognition stuff, and it is saying that these facial images cannot be used at all. So I think in the US, you've got these large, the resources and the motivation and the technology all sits within those companies. As long as we, the people, um, continue to demand our rights and vote with our feet.
Hmm.
So I think that's where we're going to have to take it. But it's very, very important consideration.
Well,
I've
if you
got
ask me, I think the problem with all of this is that all of our data is being stored by these organizations that really don't care about us, right? I mean, they care about themselves. They care about the profit motive, et cetera, et cetera. We need somebody on our side. We need an AI or a personal data store, like you say, where we have control over all of the data and then allow them access as we see fit. But do you see that actually happening?
if I think going back to my statement on interoperability, I think if the data in the personal data stores was interoperable and it was easy for profitable businesses to get hold of that data and process it and act upon it, then they would come to those stores as I guess, as definitive source of data because it's the most accurate, the most valuable. It is not contrived or done surreptitiously. It's what, when I say I want something, I actually want it, and I will be much more receptive to your ads. When that thing happens, when there's more utility for the individual, and the individuals are much more guaranteed to convert from that data, the businesses will come there. But this is it's a never-ending quest of how to tip the balance between convenience and privacy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Cool. Well, this has been awesome, Gam. Thanks so much.
Thank you for
If
picking
somebody
up.
wants to pick up your book, what's the best way? Do you have a website or?
Yeah, the website. So here's the book. Oops, here we go. And the website is dataplaybook.com. And you can find the book on Amazon if you just search.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I'll put all
Chris,
the
thank you.
information
Okay.
in the show notes if anybody wants to go directly. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
It's gam@datamindsetplaybook.com.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Talk to
All
you soon.
right. Cheers, Chris.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.